Dobar dan i dobrodošli na konferenciju Medijska pismenost i borba protiv dezinformacija u vreme pandemije. Moje ime je Tina Cvjetićanin, ja sam ovde ispred organizacije Zašto ne i stranice Raskrinkavanje BiH koji su suorganizatori današnjeg događaja. Na početku imam velike čast i zadovoljstvo da najavim obraćanje gospodina Josepa Borrella, koji je visoki predstavnik Evropske unije za spoljnu politiku i sigurnosnu politiku i potpredsednik Evropske komisije. Gospodin Borrell nam se neće obratiti uživo, ali ćemo čuti njegovu pozdravnu poruku putem snimljene video poruke. Nakon njega obratit će nam se Johann Sattler, visoki predstavnik Evropske unije u Bosni i Hercegovini i šef delegacije Evropske unije u Bosni i Hercegovini, a zatim ćemo čuti Darka Brkana, predsednika organizacije Zašto ne, koja je ispred mreže C-Check i raskrinkavanje.ba organizuje ovaj događaj u saradnji sa asocijacijom srednjoškolaca u Bosni i Hercegovini i uz podršku delegacije Evropske unije u Bosni i Hercegovini. Pa da poslušamo poruku gospodina Borrella.
Dame i gospode, dragi prijatelji, ovo je prvo izdanje Evropske unije, odnosno konferencije za Zapadni Balkan o medijskoj.
The European Union is a union of values and principles, and today you will discuss important principles which are the core of the European Union and the European Union integration. Media literacy, youth empowerment, the strengthening of civil society, and media freedom. These principles are also essential for fighting disinformation, a global challenge and a threat to democracy. Misinformation and disinformation proliferated in the Western Balkans, in the European Union, and in the whole world during the pandemic. This has been dangerous for all of us, above all because lies about medical issues can even kill. We have to engage globally to counter disinformation, to identify sources of disinformation and to provide citizens with reliable, accurate, and timely facts. Work is needed to protect and promote fundamental rights, such as freedom of expression and media pluralism. During this crisis, fact-checkers and media organizations in the Western Balkans, and many of you are present at today's conference, debunk fake news, expose disinformation trends, and inform citizens. Fact-checking organizations link up with partners in the region, work across borders, and team up with organizations in the European Union, and made an important contribution to the public debate. This work does not go unnoticed. It empowers people and the youth to speak their minds and to become agents of change. It's great to have many young people who are at the forefront of digital transformation. With most of today's participants being from the Western Balkans, let me conclude by saying what I have underlined several times before. The European Union is not complete without the Western Balkans. And I want to thank all of you, and specifically the organization, Why Not, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, for co-organizing today's conference together with our European Union delegation in Sarajevo and the External Action Service, STRATCOM, Western Balkans Task Force. I wish you a fruitful discussion and a good and productive event. Thank you.
Čuli smo poruku gospodina Josepa Borrella, specijalnog predstavnika Evropske unije za vanjske poslove i sigurnosnu politiku, a sada ćemo čuti obraćanje Johanna Sattlera, specijalnog predstavnika Evropske unije u Bosni i Hercegovini i šefa delegacije Evropske unije u Bosni i Hercegovini.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dame i gospodo. Very good to be with you this afternoon. And it's always nice, of course, to speak after the boss, but it's even nicer that the boss took the time, Mr. Borrell, to record this video message. This shows the relevance and the importance of this very topic we are discussing here today. As HRVP stressed, the need for urgent action has ever been more apparent since the pandemic changed our reality, highlighting among other things, the paramount importance of sharing accurate information. This, as Mr. Borrell said, is now in times of pandemic a question of life and death. Early in the outbreak of the pandemic in BiH, we observed the fast-spreading disinformation and conspiracy theories on everything from the origins of the virus to the ways to treat it. And I remember vividly when we were sitting in Sarajevo and looking at those crazy videos, which were especially beginning being spread from doctors with long names, titles, and important-looking auras, which were spreading incredible and totally irresponsible content. This has also, thanks to you, to the fact checkers, to the work on the ground, this has been changed. There's much less of this out there now. In this context, I'm also very happy that the EU office in BiH has taken the lead and co-organized this first EU Western Balkans conference to educate the audiences and highlight best practices from the region. It's great today to not only have people from BiH, from Sarajevo, from Banja Luke, but also from all over the region. And I want to thank all of you for joining us here today. For a few years now, we have been working closely with the fact checkers community in BiH, who are at the very heart of the global fight against disinformation. A year and a half ago, with EU support, this community produced great research that helped us better understand the nature and the scale of online disinformation in BiH. What we learned from back then is still valid today and very likely relevant to the other countries in the region. And these are some of the lessons from this research we've been doing. The first one is a need to ensure a clear understanding that fact-checking does not diminish but strengthens free speech. This is a very important point, and there has been a lot of debate about that. Secondly, tackling disinformation is impossible without educating the public, and especially young people. We are currently working with Why Not Association, is an NGO, Zašto ne, and the BiH Association of High School Students on empowering youth actors across the country by teaching them to recognize disinformation and avoid spreading it further unwittingly. Finally, the systematic and orchestrated dissemination of disinformation cannot be addressed simply by calling on the public to be vigilant. It has to be tackled through targeted measures involving the authorities as well as regulatory bodies, fact checkers, civil society, and independent media. In the case of BiH, such cooperation, and I think does not only go for BiH, such cooperation must be very much strengthened, and this is still a very long way to go. The objective is to protect freedom of information and freedom from disinformation, and to uphold truth, democracy, and freedoms that are at the heart of the European project. And this is where I want to come to an end, and wish you all the best for this afternoon, for your panels, and I'm very much looking forward to getting the conclusions and the readout from this conference. Once again, a big thanks to the organizer, to Zašto ne, to Darko Brkan, and to all the panelists who have joined us from all over the region in this important conference this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sattler, I will now introduce Darko Brkan, who is the president of our organization, Why Not, or Zašto ne, and he will also introduce our first panel for this conference. Darko.
I would like to give him an opportunity to introduce us to the conference.
Dobar dan svima, dobro jutro onima koji nas isto tako slušaju iz drugih krajeva planete i isto tako i dobro večer sigurno dijelu vas koji ste na drugoj strani planete. Mi se javljamo i iz Banja Luke nakon Sarajeva, Brisela, tu smo u Banja Luci na trećoj lokaciji dešavanja današnje konferencije. Zašto ne i raskrinkavanje je pitanje medijske pismenosti i dezinformacije, jedno od ključnih pitanja kojima se bavimo, kao i za regionalnu mrežu SeaCheck, koja je u cijelom regionu se bavi ovim pitanjima. Samim tim ova konferencija je značajna iz više razloga, te ovim putem želim prvo da se zahvalim partnerima Asocijacije srednjoškolaca u Bosni i Hercegovini, Evropskoj uniji, Evropskoj delegaciji u Bosni i Hercegovini, kao i ljudima iz Western Balkan Stratcom Task Force-a, koji su nam pomogli da zapravo i sastavimo prvi panel koji će se desiti odmah nakon mog izlaganja. Zašto je nama ovo bitno? Nama je ovo prvenstveno bitno zato što nam je konačno omogućilo da se bavimo jednim jako bitnim pitanjem, a to je medijskom pismenošću mladih ljudi u Bosni i Hercegovini, koja mislim da je ključno pitanje za budućnost, odnosno za kompletan medijski informacioni sektor u Bosni i Hercegovini i regionu. Kroz ovu inicijativu koja je dio ova konferencija, mi ćemo ući u škole u Bosni i Hercegovini, raditi sa srednjoškolcima i u krajnjem slučaju početi jedan proces koji se nadam se da će biti dugotrajan, to je da ćemo na neki način pomoći tome da mladi ljudi u Bosni i Hercegovini se bolje informišu i da kvalitetnije dobijaju informacije iz medijskog sektora. Osim toga, što je treći panel konferencije, danas bavit ćemo se i pitanjima politika, pitanjima toga na koji način se boriti na institucionalnom nivou, ovim pitanjima na koji način se ljudi koji se bave provjerom činjenica, odnosno fact-checkeri bave time, na koji način se time bavi naučna zajednica, te na neki način zaokružiti danas cijelu konferenciju upravo ovim pitanjem kako informisati mlade, odnosno kako pomoći mladima da se nauče kako da dođu do kvalitetnih informacija. Kroz sve to će se protkati i aktuelna tema pandemije COVID-19, koja je nekako centralna tema svega što se tiče medijske pismenosti, dezinformacije ove godine, a u krajnjem slučaju i svih naših života. Da ne bih previše dužio, pošto imamo danas jako dugu sesiju, odnosno dugu konferenciju, da najavim prvi panel imamo nekoliko izuzetnih govornika, njih će predstaviti moderatorica panela Jelena Berković iz Gonga Faktografa iz Hrvatske. U svakom slučaju dobrodošli, dobro jutro, dobar dan, dobro večer još jednom i hvala vam što ste tu, prijatno.
Halo, 1, 2. Nadam se da me čujete. Hi, this is Jelena Berković. Thank you, Darko, for introducing me. I must say, for introductions, it's a great honor to be a part of this event with this very agile community. In this Brussels panel, for starters, we have representatives both from the institutions, from journalism, and from the think tank community. I must say that we are all here needed to discuss and to work together for the goals that have been set by Darko at the start of the conference. So let's start with introductions of who we'll have a chance to hear from. For starters, we have Ms. Radmila Šekerinska with us, Minister of Defense of the Republic of North Macedonia. She's going to be live from Skopje. Welcome. We have a recorded message from Mr. Tonino Picula, a member of the European Parliament, and he is not able to join us live, but he will receive the messages from the conference afterwards. We have journalists represented here by Miko Salo from Helsinki, from Faktabari, and Gerakina Tuhina from Brussels, working as a journalist of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, as well as Radio Television Kosovo. And last but not least, with us we have Anna-Katarina Messmer, who is a digital news and information literacy expert from the think tank Stiftung Neue Verantwortung from Berlin. So we have asked our panelists to prepare relatively short messages within up to 10 minutes as introductory speeches. I must use the moderator power to ask to stay within the 10 minutes or even shorter if possible, so that we would have chance for questions from the audience in the last few minutes of this panel. At exact time planned, we will be going to the next panel. So let's start now with Ms. Radmila Šekerinska, who will hopefully be speaking about her experiences in North Macedonia, experiences in the South Eastern Europe on the whole, perhaps about the main actors of disinformation, and perhaps about expectations that both North Macedonia and Southeastern Europe have from the European Union in the upcoming period. So, Ms. Šekerinska, please take the microphone.
To have the clearance by the host, so sorry for the delay. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a subject where both journalists and politicians can talk in length. I'll have to say that I'll try to draw the picture on disinformation or misinformation, not only focusing on the period of the epidemic, but actually having our experience in the last few years. But I'll start by saying that disinformation and misinformation have been an element of politics from as long as it exists. So this is not in theory something new. I have started my political life back in the 90s, and I have had my share of disinformation used against me. And I think that we have learned how to cope with them. The problem is that with social media and technological advancement, the speed of technological change, this has become a completely new global and regional battleground. And if disinformation would have been used to kill a certain person's career, now they can be really used to practically target a state, a region, an institution, even free media as well. And I think that this is why they're becoming a source of many of the conferences and the discussions that we are having. And let me use two examples from North Macedonia why this is different to what we have seen in the past. 3 years ago, we have had a very difficult political protracted crisis followed by elections. And we were finally able, through the normal political process, to change the government and restart our country. And just as we were trying to get the election of a new speaker in parliament and a new government dedicated to restoring democracy in the country, you have all seen the pictures of something that was considered not only unacceptable, impossible, even for a country like today's North Macedonia. That was the storming of the parliament, which was conducted by a combination of criminal gangs, people who have lost their political agendas, but an attempt that was fully organized by the structures of the previous government. And they did not only pay people for violence, they also incited the violence by spreading a very systematic campaign of disinformation that practically, if the government changes, the country will cease to exist. And this was the emotion that ran through the crowds that were organized to practically commit murder and to prevent a peaceful transition in government. So, as I say, in the past, lies were used to destroy someone's career. In this case, lies were systematically, with the support of social media, with the support of several traditional media, were used to destroy practically democracy. And it was much easier because disinformation was spread speedier, it was spread to a more systematic manner, and by using all the available platforms. The second example happened 1 or 2 years afterwards. North Macedonia decided after these elections that it wants to go back to the track of belonging to a democratic and Western world. So we, in a way, brought back the ideas of NATO and EU accession to the center of our political debate. And it was clear that in order to have some progress on these two fronts, we will need to come up with a certain kind of solution of our problems with two of our neighbors, Bulgaria and Greece. Many people were very skeptical that this is feasible. But the moment when we started showing some signs of a U-turn in politics, and the moment when it became clear that there is a potential for compromise on the table, both with Bulgaria and especially with Greece, i sa Bugarskom, a posebno sa Grčkom, u tom trenutku smo u stvari vidjeli jednu potpuno jasnu operaciju širenja dezinformacija i potpuno optuživanje, znači koje se plasiralo nakon toga. Tako da vam mogu niz priča ispričati o ovome što se desilo, ali ukratko rečeno, imali smo nažalost sinhroniziran napad nacionalista kako u Severnoj Makedoniji, tako i u Grčkoj, ali uz to i određene dodatne političke strane i sile u regiji globalno su radile na tome da se u potpunosti uruši bilo kakva mogućnost kompromisa i to širenjem laži i širenjem jednog osjećaja da će vas neko prevariti. Na kraju će se to desiti i da svaki kompromis koji ćemo danas napraviti će dovesti do katastrofe sutra. Tako da ovo je bio jedan jako težak period za našu državu. Cijela kampanja se zasnovala na vrlo teškim emocijama, identiteta, just debunking them is not enough.
Sama činjenica da vi to raspravljate, to nije dovoljno. Nije dovoljno, jer neke od tih priča, iako su u potpunosti netačne, ostavljale su određene tragove koje su jako utjecale na javno mnijenje. Tako da je to općenito rečeno glavni problem. Tako je jednostavno voditi, ja bih rekla, tako jednu ofanzivnu akciju koja se temelji na dezinformacijama, jer vi u suštini trošite uzalud svoje resurse ako pokušavate s tim da se borite. A ono što smo vidjeli, a posebno nakon ovih slučajeva, kampanja se veoma fokusirala na našu ambiciju da se pridružimo NATO. I apsolutno nije bilo ni pokušaja da to prikriju. Tako da, na primjer, evo, mi smo u suštini bili okruženi različitim vrstama laži. Znači, apsolutno su sve laži bile usmjerene, direktne laži, da ono što radimo sa Sjedinjenim Državama da se koristi znači uran, da se za prirodu rade ogromne štete, da mi direktno imamo znači štetu i za prirodu i za stanovništvo. Znači nama su takve laži nekako došle iznenađujuće, zato što većina stvari o kojima su se pričale čisto su da su temeljene na konsenzusu, jer smo uvijek imali 90% podrške za uvijek je postojala veoma velika podrška
EU accession, strategic partnership with the US, and for the military. So this came as a surprise, and realistically speaking, it harmed us because we were not prepared. And this is, I think that based on these two examples, I think that we have drawn some lessons as a government. We have discovered that the first target or the first casualty of the misinformation campaigns were actually two. The institutions, with the attempt of undermining confidence, general confidence in institutions, and the second was also free media, because all the professional media were actually the biggest enemy of those who were operating in the domain of false information. And I think that they have really believed, they knew that once the media is muzzled and the independent institutions are abolished or weakened, then it is easy for illiberal political structures, populist structures, to take over and make the transition to an autocratic leadership that we have seen in the country. So what we have used as an instrument was going on two tracks. The first one was basic security measures, which can work up to a certain point, more secure protocols for communication, better platforms, empowering the institutions to fight back in a way. But the second was actually more important. It was a number of proactive measures with which we wanted to actually strengthen the confidence that our citizens have in their institutions and in their democratic process.
i u demokratske procese.
I really believe that the only strategy that can work
Tako da zaista vjerujem da jedina strategija koja može funkcionisati ona koja ide na reforme i na ispravljanje. Znači, naravno, ona nije strategija u koju je nemoguće prevazići. Znači, kad govorimo o informacijama koje dijelimo sa javnošću, moramo napraviti takav jedan sistem u našim društvima i za naše građane. Tako da sad govorim ne samo kao članica vlade, već i ministrica odbrane. Naša strategija, a mi jesmo bili direktna meta, nismo bili institucija koja se smatrala zaduženom za NATO stupanje. Znači, mi smo nastojali povećati transparentnost, ne sakriti se pod tim pritiskom, već zaista povećati broj dostupnih informacija, povećati informacije o svemu onome što radimo, o implementaciji budžeta, o troškovima i kao ministarstvo uspjeli smo, mi inače kao ministarstvo nismo baš prvi u transparentnosti, ali uspjeli smo sa 43. pozicije na rang listi transparentnosti da dođemo na prvo mjesto, znači da budemo najtransparentnija institucija u zemlji i to smo uspjeli u roku 3 godine. I zaista ovo smatramo nečim što je nama bila, recimo, da tako kažem, municija u toj borbi. Zaista sam uvjerena da problemi i izazovi neće nestati. Znači, oni će samo rasti, povećavati se vremenom. A po mom mišljenju, mi kao zemlje iz ove regije, koji smo nekako uvijek na frontu globalne konkurencije, moramo biti bolje pripremljeni, jer historija prosto kažnjava strateški nepripremljene i to je nešto što se primjenjuje i na zemlje u regiji i na zemlje u Evropi. Moramo biti jako otvoreni, moramo zajedno s našim evropskim partnerima tražiti pomoć i raditi s njima u strateškom komuniciranju. Jer ako pogledamo naš proces pristupanja Evropskoj uniji, moramo to raditi kroz osnaživanje naših institucija i ograničavanjem prostora za potencijalne napade. Vjerujem da ćemo nastaviti živjeti u svijetu u kojem prosto ovaj problem dominira, svijet se rapidno ne mijenja, odnosno rapidno se mijenja i u potpunosti se preoblikuje, a naše institucije i naše političke stranke, naše ponašanje, etički standardi, to se također mijenja tom brzinom, a po mom mišljenju mislim da ćemo najbolje naučiti iz naših vlastitih grešaka i trebamo imati međusobnu povezanost među zemljama u regiji, među institucijama, među profesionalnim medijima i ta saradnja, interakcija mora da se zasniva na zajedničkom uvjerenju da moramo štititi demokratiju. To je neophodno i ovdje završavam. Ne radi se samo o dezinformacijama i ne radi se samo o iskrenosti koju možemo primijeniti. Brojni su govorili o medijskoj pismenosti. Mi planiramo da uvedemo u naše obrazovanje medijsku pismenost i po mom mišljenju to je samo jedan mali dio cijele priče. Moramo ulagati više u naše javno obrazovanje, moramo razgovarati o potrebi da ako želimo da ciljamo na ta pitanja i da se rješavamo, ne samo da moramo ulagati u odbrambene sposobnosti, već moramo rješavati neravnopravnost, loše usluge koje se pružaju i nedostatak povjerenja, posebno mladih ljudi u institucije. Znači, nekada dezinformacije nisu jedini razlog za nepovjerenje, već i prilike koje nedostaju. Tako da uz sve to bit ćemo u stanju bolje se boriti i na jedan pametniji način. Hvala vam na pažnji.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. So thank you, Ms. Shekerinska. Speaking from the Northern Macedonia can serve to all of us perhaps as a pioneer in the fight on disinformation, and perhaps we can learn quite a lot from your experiences. We will have speakers further along to give us their experiences on how to strengthen media literacy, but in the meantime, let's hear a message from the European Parliament, specifically from one member of the European Parliament, Mr. Tonino Picula, who is speaking from an institution that has just started a special committee on foreign interference in democratic processes in the EU, and will mention how sometimes in the Western Balkans it is the political elites that are part of the problem. So here is his pre-recorded message.
On je snimio svoju poruku i poslušajmo je. Dame i gospodo, veliko mi je zadovoljstvo što vam se obraćam na prvoj konferenciji o medijskoj pismenosti na Zapadnom Balkanu. Žao mi je što se ne mogu direktno uključiti s vama učestvovati u ovom vrlo važnom događaju, jer ćete govoriti o nečemu što je ključno za izgradnju demokratskih društava. Evropa, ali i cijeli svijet se suočava sa nikada viđenom krizom. Znači imamo pandemiju, zdravstveni sistemi, ali i demokratija su ugroženi. I upravo dezinformacije o ovoj krizi su nešto što do sad nismo imali priliku vidjeti. Da vam dam primjer, Evropska unija je jasno podržavala društva unutar Evropske unije, ali i van Evropske unije, a posebno i prvenstveno Zapadni Balkan. Evropska unija je trebalo nekoliko dana da reaguje, ali ne možemo osporiti podršku Evropska unija dala. Međutim, informacije nisu tekle kako treba, već dezinformacije. One su se širile. Proteklih nekoliko mjeseci bili smo svjedoci jako velikog broja dezinformacija koje su imale cilj narušavanja solidarnosti i aktivnosti Evropske unije. I dovodilo se u pitanje također nauka i naučni dokazi i u potpunosti se podrivalo ono što su zdravstveni sistemi govorili. Jasna namjera je bila da se uradi destabilizacija društava te da se demokratija prikaže kao sistem koji nije u stanju da se sa ovakvom situacijom nosi. Taj protok informacija dolazi od eksternih aktera u nekim slučajevima smo imali vrlo kompleksne lokalne mješavine državnih i nedržavnih aktera u ovom smislu. Neinformirani građani također su doprinosili širenju ovih informacija. Imali smo teorije zavere, dezinformacije i tako dalje. To je nešto što nije ništa novo, to smo već vidjeli. Već metode širenja digitalne globalne direktne su u potpunosti nove i to zahtjeva od nas da ponovo razmislimo kako mi u stvari konzumiramo medijski sadržaj, te kakve informacije primamo i iz kakvih izvora ih primamo. Over the last 5 years, European Union has set out and is implementing measures to address disinformation. The EU has been working on improved detection, analysis, and exposure of disinformation. It has set up a stronger cooperation internally between member states and its international partners. It has enhanced collaboration with online platforms working for the institutions of the Code of Conduct with world high-tech leading companies. Radili smo na kodeksima ponašanja upravo u tom smislu. I na kraju, ali ne manje važno, Evropska unija je nastojala podizati svijest među društvom o tome šta se dešava i koliko je to opasno, kako u Evropskoj uniji i šire. Prošle sedmice Evropska unija je osnovala, odnosno rad posebne komisije je započeo, komisije koja će se baviti uplitanjem eksternih aktera u brojna neka pitanja Evropske unije, uključujući i pitanje dezinformacije. Mi ćemo raditi blisko, sarađivati sa Zapadnim Balkanom u ovom smislu. I najbolje prakse naših država članica su pokazali da bismo stvorili otpornost na dezinformacije i druge vrste prijetnji, javne institucije i civilno društvo moraju da urade svoj dio posla. Civilno društvo, recimo fact-checking zajednica, posebno ona na Zapadnom Balkanu, zaista su uveliko doprinijeli u ovoj temi tokom krize i zaslužili našu kontinuiranu podršku. U nekim dijelovima Zapadnog Balkana radili su u izuzetno teškim okolnostima. Ono što smo mi primijetili jeste da u određenim dijelovima Zapadnog Balkana političke elite su otvorile svoje dominantne komunikacijske kanale upravo pogrešnim informacijama o krizi i drugim dezinformacijama. To je nešto što ne trebamo viđati. To nije nešto što se desilo svugdje na Zapadnom Balkanu. Recimo, u Banja Luci, u Beogradu je komunikacija o pomoći Evropske unije bila drugačija u poređenju sa Skopjem, Podgoricom, Sarajevom i Prištinom. Bile su to vrlo teška vremena za fact-checkere, ali također i za profesionalne nezavisne medije koji su izgubili izvore prihoda tokom ove krize. Drago mi da je Evropska unija u mnogo slučaja uspjela dati podršku kvalitetnom novinarstvu da preživi ovu pandemiju. Značaj medijske slobode postao je još očigledniji tokom krize. Mi kontinuirano gledamo kako se bez nezavisnih novinarstva i nezavisnih medija nemamo način da ovo prevaziđemo. Koliko dezinformacije spjevaju, zato nam je ključno da uradimo sve što možemo da pružimo adekvatnu politiku, finansijsku i svaku drugu, da nastavi rad nezavisnih profesionalnih medija koji se bave kvalitetnim novinarstvom. Paralelno s tim, mi u Evropskoj uniji, ali i naši partneri na Zapadnom Balkanu, trebamo raditi zajedno da unaprijedimo nivo medijske pismenosti, jer se to dokazalo vrlo efikasnim sredstvom. I upravo ova konferencija danas tome doprinosi. Želim zahvaliti organizatorima što su nas sve okupili tokom ovog događaja i zaista nadam se budućoj saradnji i podršci. Želim vam uspješnu konferenciju i također se radujem zaključcima koje ćete donijeti na ovoj konferenciji.
Hello again. Hopefully now we can hear the studio from Zagreb. And I'm calling the studio in Helsinki where we have Miko Salo. Hi Miko, hopefully it will work that you can turn yourself on your microphone and can hear you. Miko is a journalist working in Fakt na Bari, correct me if I'm wrong, and also providing media and information literacy in Finland. They are great experiences that we can learn from in their fight against disinformation as well as other information disorders in Finland. Please spread the word, spread the knowledge. We would like to make our own mistakes, not to repeat yours. Please go.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm really happy to contribute. First, I could probably start a little bit with my background. I'm not exactly a journalist, but of course, fact-checking is very much associated to that one. We started 2014 on fact-checking the European elections first because there was a lot of nonsense going on at that in Finland. Then we kind of gradually went to training the journalists in schools so that the journalists would get back to the one that they would need most. So the fact base, and finally then as the disinformation came more and more vivid in the social platforms, then we have pretty much focused on that one, while kind of getting to the schools. And this is something that I probably want to share with you, because that's where I think we have the biggest potential. This all in the context that I have a chance to visit the Western Balkans now like 3 or 4 times the last 2 or 3 years, and I have to say that our realities are somewhat different in regards to disinformation and the starting points. And Finland is luckily one of the most stable countries when it comes to the institutions that was talked here, and this is of course something we should really preserve at the moment and strengthen, because that is exactly what the disinformation tries to kind of play down and create confusion. Our recipe in Finland Finland, okay, that's a big topic. It's been kind of, we have a very holistic concept for security. So it really starts from the state level and all the, let's say, military security side. But everybody is somehow involved, and everybody has their role, and we still can exchange and change best practices, so to say. It might not be exactly the same, the histories are different and all that, but perhaps we can kind of offer you some sort of role model to get into that type of direction. So you have to dialogue, we have a common, let's say, enemy, somebody that confuses the public space and makes our societies very vulnerable. But outside that, as I said, the starting point of a media sector that is still relatively well preserved compared to what I've heard in the Balkans, who have serious problems with funding and the independence of the media and all that type of things. That I am, of course, very worried as well. But where we might give some sort of role model is the education system, and there it really has to start from the scratches. It needs to start from the curricula. You have to empower the teachers. I mean, that's how you can kind of really get the next generation growing without being completely manipulated in the internet. And unfortunately, that is very easy at the moment. I encourage you to look at the new film made, it's circulating in the Netflix at the moment. It's called Social Dilemma. And it explains how, let's say, mixed up our information systems and the structures at the moment. We have unfortunate cases that it's been so very easy to confuse that debate in the case. There are some familiar cases to the Western Balkans that how it's been profited as such, but at the same time it explains that there is an awareness on that. But this is like where it all kind of starts in the social networks, and I think that's why it's so important that the EU is finally doing something about it and is serious about that one. Outside that, what we have done in Finland, we have kind of tried to raise awareness of the problems and the biases of the internet, because that's where the youngsters are, that's where everybody is to some extent. And this has actually led pretty much in the last phase to empowering people to take care of their privacy. Because the biggest challenges, as I see them, are the micro-targeting. And I mean, that's how you get really to the bottom of the things. And that's how you can kind of make me believe that, you know, I'm living in this fact-checking bubble and all that. And this is the reality, and it's not. And this is especially important in times of COVID, when we are all struck in our home and we don't really have a feeling what's happening in a bit more balanced world where we can still trust our family and friends and discuss things and don't get emotionally taken away, as it's very easily in the social media. So if there would be something, I would try to get that one as early as possible. We really started first like the future voters, 16 years old. Personally, the more and more I believe in it, we should start very early, as soon as the people get their first mobile device. And because that's where the information flows comes to us, and we have to be somehow prepared. And this is something we are only working on it. We call it a digital information literacy, and we are very happy to share that one later when we get further. And we really very much believe also the engagement on the public or contributing to the news cycles, because that's how you understand how the real journalism is done. And it's not whatever like a storytelling in the networks or something like that, but it's a really hard work going to the sources and challenging your opinions and all that. So practically it's just slowing down. We know that there are differences. Finns are known for social distancing, you know, even without the COVID times, and not being the super emotional. That helps us, that gives us the resilience, that gives us to kind of cool down, observe things, check
će nam omogućiti da budemo dovoljno prisebni, da provjerimo činjenice, da provjerimo izvore, provjerimo mnoge stvari, jer mi smo, da kažemo, svi proizvodi na internetu i, nažalost, neke zemlje, treće zemlje, pa možda čak i neki interni faktori praktički koriste ovu trenutnu situaciju kako bi manipulirali našu trenutnu situaciju. Ja se nadam da vam ovo nije previše tmudo sve što govorim, ali opet nekako naglasak stavljam na to da moramo početi čim prije. Već sa mladim ljudima moramo ih osvijestiti o ovom problemu kako bi na koncu zaista mogli da mobiliziramo i iznađemo neko održivo rješenje za ovo.
Thank you, Miko. These are very important lessons to be learned. Start at the earliest age if friends do it well, not necessarily with robotics and stuff, but literacy, especially regarding privacy, online privacy, it's never too early to start with that. So we go now to multi-annual journalist working at the moment in Brussels and reporting on European issues for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty and Radio Television of Kosovo. Jarakina Tuhina is with us, and she's witnessed quite a few changes on European continent in her working period. So that right now we have Radio Free Europe reopening in Hungary, and when we talk about Western Balkans, we see quite a lot of media that are not necessarily trustworthy or free. What is your take on it? Disinformation is promoted by politicians and misused for political purposes. This is what you witness. Would you mind explaining a bit further on how it works?
Kako sve to djeluje u stvarnosti?
After almost 3 decades, ironically, Western Balkans aspires membership in the European Union, and once you are allowed to get in, that means that you have a free society, free media, and no issues with rule of law. But once you're in, it's a bit difficult to be disciplined and to maintain
nakon svega toga jako je teško ostati discipliniran i očuvati neke ključne principe i načela Evropske unije.
We have 2 other EU member states, Bulgaria and Romania, that have been back providing news information, although Hungary is a more specific topic, but I'm sorry for this kind of diversion. Speaking of freedom of media, I don't think that Western Balkans lacks freedom of expression.
Mimo teme, ali evo samo da kažem zapravo, sada ima, da kažemo, vrlo širok digitalni prostor, ali danas nam nedostaje tačnost. Danas se mediji na Zapadnom Balkanu suočavaju sa krizom. Kriza je bila prisutna i prije COVID-a, a danas u vrijeme pandemije postaje mnogo ozbiljnija. Zašto? Zato što sada mediji opstaju zahvaljujući reklamama, zahvaljujući marketingu. I to je jedan, da kažemo, začarani krug koji je vrlo očigledan i upravo u tom smislu svi relevantni dokumenti koji zapravo propituju vlasništvo raznih medija na Zapadnom Balkanu. Mnoge zemlje čak ni ne otkrivaju vlasničku strukturu takvih medija, a mi svi imamo kontinuirani problem tačnosti. Najveći problem je što ti ljudi koji su odgovorni za nedostatak medijske nepristrasnosti su zapravo na čelu tih država. U vrijeme COVID-a mi smo čak imali situaciju kako ta jedna paradigma dezinformacijama se koristi za domaće političke programe. Evo, neko od kolega je metaforički kazao da je Evropska unija, odnosno kako su u Evropskoj uniji vrlo dobili različite izvještaje iz različitih zemalja Zapadnog Balkana. Zašto? Zato što imali smo maske koje su dolazile iz Kine kao medicinska pomoć koje su prodavane. A takvu jednu, da kažemo, pošiljku je dočekao premijer Srbije narodovo. Tako da naravno građani iz Srbije su žali da te donacije su bile mnogo veće od onoga što su dobili od Evropske unije. Sad Evropska unija sada ili dobija rat ili gubi rat. sad, dobija rat zato što je Evropska unija tu za Zapadni Balkan. Čak i u vrijeme najveće krize, evo sad da kažemo zdravstvene krize, pa i ekonomske krize, Evropska unija je bila dovoljno široka da nam daje donacije za Zapadni Balkan, ali nekako je to ostalo nevidljivo zato što oni nisu uspješno progurali takvu jednu poruku u medijima. Tako da, naravno, organizovane su razne radionice za novinare, za kosovske Albance i kosovske Srbe. I pitanje je bilo ko je najveći donator. Kosovski Srbi su kazali Kina, a neki kosovarski Albanije su čak pomenuli SAD. Međutim, niko od njih nije kazao da je Evropska unija ta koja je najveći donator. Ja dolazim sa Kosova. U mojoj zemlji, u jeku krize, medijski urednici nisu bili sigurni zapravo o čemu prvo govoriti, jer mi sad govorimo o tome da svaki medij imali su naravno vijesti i kao udarnu vijest imali upravo informacije o COVID-u, jer je to zapravo najbitnija vijest. Koristeći sad različite pogrešne informacije, sad neću namjerno reći dezinformacije, nego pogrešne informacije, jer ljudi koji su želeli da dođu na vlast su kazali da ova prethodna vlasta je bila u izolaciji. Mi govorimo o vrijeme kada je čitav svijet bio u izolaciji. Ta isti narativ traje još i danas. Nova vlasta je zapravo izvukla zemlju iz izolacije. Ali od kada? Od juna, kada je naš aerodrom proradio i kad su ljudi već mogli da se malo slabije, više kreću i da posjete možda neke svoje rođake u Evropskoj uniji. Upravo ovdje se sad mi fokusiramo na pitanje provjere činjenica i profesionalno novinarstvo. Ja pripadam staroj školi novinara, gdje je provjera činjenica zapravo bila sastavni dio. Da bi bilo uopšte kredibilan novinar, morate provjeravati činjenice. Ja znam da bismo mi danas morali da se vratimo tim tradicionalnim načinima izvještavanja. Objasniti ljudima da naravno postoji značajna razlika između, da kažemo, ozbiljnog profesionalnog novinarstva i novinarstva koji se bave, da kažemo, obični građani. Nemojmo sada da budemo za studija slučaja za one koje provjeravaju činjenice. Dajmo da budemo profesionalni novinari. Hajde da budemo oni koji provjeravaju činjenice radi sebe, jer naše priče proći kroz brojne ruke, brojne oči prije nego se objavi. Jer mi znamo kakva je odgovornost kada se ta informacija već pusti u eter. Prema tome, kako se boriti protiv lažnih vijesti tako što ćemo promovirati i ulagati profesionalno novinarstvo. To jeste dugoročan poduhvat, nešto što je jako teška borba, ali nije nemoguće, jer mi i dalje imamo ljude koji su zaista posvećeni i koji se žele nastaviti baviti valjanim novinarstvom, kredibilnim novinarstvom. Mi ne želimo biti neko ko se pretvara da je novinar. Mi želimo biti ljudi koji će ostati zapamćeni po onome što smo radili. Ja sam recimo osoba koja zapravo ima nekoliko računa i profila na raznim društvenim mrežama. Ali evo, ja sam dobila svoju vidljivost i bez promocije. Zato što radim ovo što radim i zato što volim ovo što radim. I ja vjerujem da zaista mladi novinari moraju početi vjerovati da posvećenim radom i zaista ulaganjem u svoj profesionalni rad će u konačnici zaista profitirati.
Thank you for this very frank and emotional discussion. It really makes sense to strengthen proper journalism, whether it's in the old school way, traditional news media, or whether it's in new media that are starting up anyway, such as Raskrinkavanje Ba and others in the Southeastern Europe, in the CCHEK network. So for all of these changes and upgrades, we need sustainable policy solutions. We wonder whether the EU is doing enough and what its plans are for the next year. So maybe our next panelist might give us some hope from that direction, coming from the think tank, Stiftung Neue Verantwortung from Berlin. Anna-Katarina Messler is the digital news and information literacy expert. So she will be speaking to us about citizens' literacy, how it should be raised and how it can be raised, and what their appropriate skills for the future should be. And then perhaps in the discussion later we might discuss about official European plans regarding Digital Services Act, European Democracy Action Plan, and other systematic and institutional solutions. But so far, Anna-Katarina, please share your experiences and research on literacy.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm trying to share my screen with you now, because I have a very short presentation with me. So I hope you can see it now. Does everything work? Can you give me a heads up maybe? Thank you so much. So I'd like to start with a question today for you. And the question is, when was the last time you scrolled through a social media timeline and you took enough time to think about each and every post you saw and to classify like each post, text, picture, video, and you asked yourself what kind of information it is. Is it like raw information? Is it entertainment? Is it an advertisement, opinion, or maybe disinformation? The first time I did that, I realized how much invisible cognitive work we do actually every day, just incidentally, by just using our smartphones. So one of our main challenges in the digital public sphere is something we call incidental news exposure. Digital environments are becoming increasingly integrated into people's daily routines. So most of the time when people, for example, pick up their smartphones, they do not actively seek news, but use it for communicating with friends, listening to music, or using social media. And as you can see here, for example, this is the youth study for Southeast Europe by Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. But using social media, though, has more become something like a leisure activity as well. But even when individuals are not motivated to seek out news, they are exposed to news, for example, due to their sharing activities, the sharing activities of their contacts, due to sponsored posts or algorithmic content curation. And of course, all of this is also true for incidental disinformation exposure. So the challenge we are facing is people are exposed to news as well as to disinformation when they are like distracted and not in a state of mind, for example, for critical thinking or processing complex information. And platforms, to be honest, do not help us with this challenge. Actually, as Miko Salo already mentioned, the opposite is true. They are distracting us even more, and at the same time, all different pieces of information come in the same shape and in the same design. So this information is only like the tip of the iceberg, and there are a lot of underlying challenges. And that's why we decided at Stiftung Neue Verantwortung to broaden our view and to focus on digital news literacy. And we define it as follows. Digital news literacy encompasses a fundamental understanding of the importance of the public sphere for democracy and how this public sphere functions. The willingness to stay informed about politics, as well as the technological, social, and cognitive abilities to find, identify, analyze, verify, evaluate, develop, comment on, and share information and news in order to be able to participate in digital publics as a citizen. And to make it more tangible what this means, we developed a news literacy model of 6 skill sets you can see here. Because to be digitally news literate today means we need the different skills of actually 6 experts. Some of them you know already, or you hear it already. We call them the digital navigator, the journalist, the fact checker, the debater, the communication scholar, and the citoyen, which is a French term for a citizen, who is driven by a high political and societal compass. And let me briefly introduce these experts to you. The digital navigator is the one I already mentioned. It's the first skill set. It helps us to navigate through the digital public sphere and to classify quickly what the main purpose of the different pieces of information are. So for example, to classify if a TikTok video is entertainment or an advertisement, or if a politician's tweet is neutral information or a political expression. And what can help us here is further information given on the platform directly, such as labels for verified accounts, advertisements, or for tagging disinformation. When it's necessary to dig deeper, it's the journalist skill set that will help us to assess the quality of a news item or the reliability of a source. And therefore, the media environment can be relevant, but it's also the content itself. Because actually, on the one hand, articles on a news site can be disinformation or misinformation, while on the other hand, Twitter threads or YouTube videos can provide reliable news. So one question is, for example, whether all necessary information is given, for example, in a tweet, or another question, which is especially important when it comes to disinformation, is if an article is written in a strongly emotionalizing manner. But if the information provided by a source is insufficient or the source itself is unknown, the skills of the fact checkers can help. And what we can learn from fact checkers is mainly lateral reading, which means one leaves an app or a website and opens a new browser tab in order to use the resources of the internet to learn more about a site, a source, or a topic. And this is also, as already mentioned, important for the public discourse because detecting disinformation prevents people from sharing it. And this is where the debater skill set comes into play because one skill is, for example, don't forward unchecked messages from unknown sources, even if it's funny or outrageous, because your online behavior actually shapes the news environment of other users. And this means to understand one's own role in the digital public sphere is an important skill. And it is something we can learn from communication scholars who also teach us the basics of the media system, as well as the technological background of algorithms. And now, take a short breath. Because at first glance, all of this may sound quite familiar, and at the same time, it sounds like quite challenging. And actually, it is. So let me introduce one last dimension, which is quite often implicitly addressed in debates about media literacy, but not explicitly named. And it's the political dimension of the citoyen. And that is less a skill set and more a mindset. And it includes a basic understanding of the importance of independent journalism for a functioning democracy, as well as trust in democratic institutions. And therefore, this dimension is much more dependent on the national and the political context. And in our German concept, it includes trust in political, media, and scientific institutions. But we are well aware that these institutions are not inherently trustworthy. So being a citoyen includes also skills like critical thinking. So what do we need policy-wise? First of all, Mr. Salo already mentioned it, and I would support that. Since school is the place where we educate responsible citizens, we need to revise school curricula for digital news literacy. This includes teaching the skills I just outlined, and a good formal school education also includes promoting skills like tolerance for ambiguity, curiosity, and exploratory spirit, because this is a good way to foster immunity against disinformation and conspiracy myths. Secondly, we need programs to educate adults. It's hardly surprising that research shows that it's mainly older people who share disinformation the most, since adults grew up without learning media literacy in school. And last but not least, when we talk about educating the future citizens of the EU, when we talk about trust, it's also important to have trustworthy institutions. So for me, it's critical to mention that digital news literacy is not a one-way street. It's not something we can just impose on the citizens. It is also important for social media platforms, for political unions, for political governments, and for journalists to be trustworthy. And for example, by working together with civil society institutions, by creating transparency, as Ms. Already mentioned, and by not sharing and spreading disinformation. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna Katerina, and thanks to all the panelists. Hopefully you can hear me well, and hopefully the organizers of the event will allow us for one single question in the end of this panel. Do have in mind that there will be some reports written after the event, and perhaps you might want to use as panelists this last question, short answer, to send a very precise message to those listening in European and other institutions who need to be making decisions in order for the changes that we want to happen. So we were talking about spreading disinformation on purpose or not by political and other actors across borders and beyond communities. What would be your final messages to those who are making decisions in European Union level? Please, panelists, go as soon as you are ready to provide an answer. We might start with Ms. Radmila Šekerinska, who is hopefully still with us.
I'm here.
And we can hear you, please go. And then I will ask Jerakina to continue.
I was also intrigued by one written question here about small web portals that serve to promote a certain political career idea and attack other ideas. It is so present these days in all the countries in the region. I think that this has become almost a norm. And it's not just political parties. It's also third parties, it's also state and non-state actors, it's web portals and social media have been really systematically abused. I do believe that we should protect the right of free media by allowing people to create new media outlets. But as with the traditional media, I think ownership and transparency of ownership is what will help us go through the maze of portals in search of the truth. When it comes to the EU, I fully agree with what was mentioned here, that EU has been strategically present in the region. They have even paid the bill for many things. And in the same time, they have not created the influence that goes along. And this is because the EU was still used to a situation of 20 years ago when in the traditional media landscape, they were able to operate and send that message very, very easily. We all come from countries, most of the countries in the region that had very strong support for the EU, maybe one or two countries minus. What we have seen in the last years is a significant deterioration, first in the confidence in our institutions, but also deteriorating trends when it comes to the confidence in the EU. And these two trends are equally worrying. So I do believe that the EU should present its policies in a more strategic manner and with more coordination and discussion with some of the pro-democratic forces in the different countries. It's not necessarily just institutions, it's political parties, it's NGOs, it's citizens, it's youth movements, etc. And I do believe that some of the good ideas, for example, like the committee created in the European Parliament, could be one of the proposals that the Parliament offers to the parliaments in the region. if it works there, it could work here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So from media ownership to other things that we've heard in presentations, hopefully Gerakina might provide a few more ideas that are circling around Brussels on what would be the expectations from the decision makers. Do we have you here, Gerakina, still?
Yes, Jelena, I'm here. I could just echo what Madame Shekerinska said, but I have to use a quote of a good friend of mine. European Union has Ronaldo and Messi, but never wins a championship. Why? Because of the visibility and because of the approach. EU should be more outspoken, should go out with simplistic words, but be more present. I just have to deviate conversation with just a simple example what happened last week in the region. Belgrade and Pristina were visited by a big delegation from overseas who were promoting investment in the projects that are already paid by European Union, many of them. How this was revealed? Only because a journalist asked EU after several days whether these projects are being invested. And then when we asked for follow-up of the information, it took them days to give us back feedback. In present days is too far long. It's too long. It's forgotten story. So EU should be more outspoken. It should not be shy because it's doing a big work there. It pays bills. It has the moral responsibility towards the region, and nevertheless, it's not visible. So demand the ownership of the media, ask for more presence in the media, and invest in the mainstream media, in professional media that will go on with traditional fact-checking in the newsrooms.
And if I may add to that, it's not only the visibility of European investments that needs to be raised, but also visibility of European ambassadors, various ambassadors that need to be raised as well. Hopefully regarding media literacy, we can hear final words from Miko Salo. What would be your suggestions toward decision makers regarding media and information literacy as a systematic approach on the EU level?
I think on the resources side, it's to getting serious. I mean, those resources are not immense, but at the same time, I would go for the structural things and be tough to the platforms on that one, because that's where it gets, and try to get them on board. We have to remember that still, when we are talking about the platforms, we are talking about the US that are still engaging in discussions. Then we got Russian and Chinese platforms that we don't unfortunately have any control. So with those one, of course, we have to be especially careful. But I mean, that's probably the structural things that one can do. And I mean, outside that, I mean, show example, live up to the values. I tend to listen a lot of the talk in Brussels with different kind of hats, and being inside the administration, at times it was the value talk was a little bit like here and there. But I have to say that at the moment, it's really, we are living in serious times, and showing example and being, that's probably the best thing. Then a small point, probably a point to one of the questions there on the traveling disinformation. There is a promising thing, of course, that the institutions and different actors are trying to enhance the cooperation in between the countries. Mm-hmm. And we have a very interesting example from the fact checkers called Coronavirus Fact Alliance. That is actually as a material. There's one website, and I think Christina is later here to tell about that one. But as such, I mean, that opens eyes. We have used it as a tool. You got like 8,000 different coronavirus fact checks, and just the variety of nonsense that there is. I mean, it's eye-opening as such. And then there are some interesting European efforts to come, like European Digital Media Observatory or something like that, because it's very often the same nonsense, just having a little bit like local adaptations, and we should pool our resources for that type of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Miko, for mentioning both situations. Let's see, for the end, Anna-Katarina, would you have any suggestions on future decision-making regarding online disinformation and how to fight it?
Yes, thank you for the question. I would say it's really extremely important to have like digital literacy campaigns for adults. It's something we always forget about, but it's the adults who share disinformation online the most, and they didn't learn it in school. So I would really shift the focus on that very specific problem. And we often forget that it's not more information that is needed, because people feel like they are drowning in an information flood. So it's not about giving more information, it's about helping people process the information flood. It's helping people filtering the reliable sources, the trustworthy institutions. And I would say it's also important to regulate the platforms to really help people sorting out the relevant and reliable informations they can get.
Thank you. Regulation is something to be seen in the future from the European institutions. Hopefully, the institutions, political institutions in our region will follow on to that and continue cooperation where necessary. I use this opportunity to thank you, to say a big thank you to all the panelists for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, good and bad, and your emotions on this very important topic. Wish you all good luck in your future endeavors. Somehow I have a feeling that we'll be meeting quite a few times in the future and networking, because the problem is here to stay, and we're here to stay to fight it. So thank you with some optimism, because simply we are communicating more than we did 6 months ago. There should be some changes to be expected. Thank you to the organizers. And at this point, I just ask for understanding from the audience that did have some very specific questions, but hopefully Miko and Jerekina and Shekerinska did provide some answers to the questions. And hopefully in the future, we'll have more time and focus on the specifics of different Western Balkan countries. So whether the organizers wish to join us at this moment, I'm not sure. But if not, thank you to everyone. Stay well, stay safe, and sometimes stay devices off. Thank you.